Hey everyone, tonight we're diving deep into something that will absolutely shatter everything you thought you knew about ancient Egypt. Forget the sanitized museum displays and Hollywood depictions. We're about to uncover the hidden world of Egypt's most secretive and shocking religious practices. The stuff they don't teach you in history class, the rituals that would make modern society gasp in disbelief. You see, beneath those towering pyramids and golden death masks lay a civilization where sexuality wasn't just accepted, it was worshipped. Where gods engaged in acts so explicit they'd make your browser history look tame. Where pharaohs performed public ceremonies that would shut down Times Square today. This isn't some conspiracy theory or internet rabbit hole. This is documented history, carved into temple walls, written on ancient papyrus, and discovered by archaeologists who probably wished they'd chosen a different career path. So dim the lights, maybe grab a coffee, and prepare yourself for a journey into the shadows of the ancient world. Because what you're about to learn will change how you see those majestic monuments forever. And trust me, once you know these secrets, you'll never look at a hieroglyph the same way again. Picture this, you're standing in the heart of ancient Thebes, surrounded by towering temples and the bustle of daily life. The sun beats down mercilessly as priests prepare for a ceremony that would make headlines around the world today. Because in ancient Egypt, the most sacred religious ritual of the year involved the pharaoh, the divine ruler of millions, performing an act of self-pleasure in full view of his subjects. This wasn't some perverted display or royal indulgence. This was the foundation of Egyptian cosmology itself. According to their creation mythology, the universe began when Atum, the primordial god, emerged from the chaotic waters of nothingness and created the first divine beings through masturbation. His sacred seed became the building blocks of reality itself. You can still see these creation scenes carved into temple walls at Karnak, where ancient artists depicted Atum in the act of cosmic creation. The Egyptians didn't view this as obscene or shameful. To them, it represented the ultimate creative force, the moment when emptiness transformed into existence. Sexual energy was literally the power that built the universe. Every year, when the Nile began its crucial flood season, the pharaoh would reenact this primordial creation myth. Surrounded by high priests and court officials, he would ritually masturbate into the sacred river, believing his divine seed would ensure the waters rose to just the right level. Too little flooding meant famine. Too much meant destruction. The survival of the entire civilization depended on the pharaoh's ability to channel cosmic sexual energy. Foreign visitors like Herodotus witnessed these ceremonies and wrote about them with barely concealed amazement. Imagine being a Greek diplomat, expecting some dignified religious procession, only to witness the most powerful man in the known world performing what you'd consider a private act as a matter of state policy. The pressure on these pharaohs must have been unimaginable. Millions of lives hanging in the balance, the agricultural season depending on your performance, all while priests chanted ancient formulas and recorded every detail for posterity. Talk about performance anxiety on a cosmic scale. But this was just the beginning of Egypt's complex relationship with sexuality and the divine. Deep within their temples, priests maintained secret knowledge about gods whose sexual exploits would make ancient Roman orgies look like church picnics. Take Min, the god of fertility and male sexual power. This deity was depicted with an permanently erect phallus so enormous it required its own pedestal. During his annual festival, a massive statue of Min, complete with his oversized appendage, would be paraded through the streets while women exposed themselves to absorb his procreative energy. The Festival of Min wasn't some underground cult gathering. It was a major public celebration attended by thousands. Women hoping to conceive would line the parade route, believing that exposure to the god's divine masculinity would grant them fertility. Unmarried women participated hoping to attract both divine blessing and very human husbands. One of the strangest elements of this festival involved lettuce. Yes, ordinary lettuce. The Egyptians noticed that certain varieties, when broken, released a white milky substance that reminded them of ejaculation. During Min's festival, tall erect lettuce plants were presented to the god as sacred offerings, while priests recited fertility prayers. The celebration climaxed with the release of 4 wild bulls, representing Min's virility, into the countryside to mate with cows and spread the god's fertility across the land. Meanwhile, the pharaoh would ceremonially cut grain, symbolizing his own sexual potency and its connection to agricultural abundance. These weren't isolated incidents or minor regional customs. These practices formed the backbone of Egyptian religious life for over 3,000 years. Sexual energy was considered a fundamental force of nature, as essential as the sun's heat or the Nile's flood. But perhaps the most shocking aspect of Egyptian sexuality wasn't what happened during life, but what they expected after death. The Egyptian afterlife wasn't some ethereal realm of pure spirits floating on clouds. It was a fully physical paradise where the deceased would enjoy all the pleasures they had in life, including sex. The myth of Osiris, Egypt's god of the dead, established this pattern. When Osiris was murdered and dismembered by his jealous brother, his wife Isis recovered all his body parts except one, his penis. Undeterred, she crafted a magical replacement and used it to conceive their son, Horus. This wasn't just a colorful story, it became the template for all Egyptian resurrection. During mummification, male bodies often received artificial phalluses crafted from resin and linen. Female mummies sometimes had artificial vulvas molded for them. CT scans of royal mummies have revealed these intimate details, confirming that Egyptians believed sexual organs were essential equipment for the afterlife journey. The famous Turin erotic papyrus, now housed in an Italian museum, depicts various sexual positions that Egyptians expected to enjoy in paradise. These weren't hidden away as shameful secrets. They were part of official religious iconography, tomb paintings that decorated the burial chambers of nobles and pharaohs. For ancient Egyptians, a sexless afterlife wasn't worth having. Their paradise included eternal youth, abundant food and drink, and unlimited sexual pleasure. When pharaohs like Tutankhamun were buried with massive collections of grave goods, these included items for sexual enjoyment in the next world. This brings us to perhaps the most controversial aspect of Egyptian sexuality, the practice that would define royal bloodlines for millennia and create some of history's most twisted family trees. But that's where our journey takes an even darker turn, into practices so shocking they challenge everything we think we know about ancient civilization. The rabbit hole goes much deeper, and what we've uncovered so far is just the surface of Egypt's hidden sexual mysteries. Royal bloodlines in ancient Egypt weren't just about maintaining power. They were about preserving what Egyptians believed was literal divine essence flowing through their veins. And to keep that essence pure, pharaohs did something that would horrify modern society. They married their own sisters, their daughters, sometimes even their mothers. This wasn't some rare aberration or desperate political move. For over 3,000 years, incest was standard operating procedure in the royal palace. The most famous practitioner was Cleopatra VII. Before her legendary affairs with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, she was married to not one, but 2 of her younger brothers. When the first drowned during civil war, she simply moved on to the next brother in line. But Cleopatra was following a tradition as old as Egypt itself. The gods had set the example. Osiris married his sister Isis, Their son Horus was sometimes described as marrying his own mother. These divine family arrangements provided the perfect justification for royal incest. Pharaohs weren't breaking taboos. They were following divine precedent. The political logic was ruthlessly simple. By marrying within the family, pharaohs ensured no outside bloodline could claim royal connection. Sister wives were less likely to plot against their brother husbands because they shared identical family interests. Most importantly, it preserved what Egyptians saw as the sacred bloodline that carried the actual essence of the gods. DNA analysis of royal mummies has confirmed these practices extended far beyond the famous cases. Testing on Tutankhamun's remains revealed his parents were full siblings. His father, Akhenaten, married several of his own daughters after his primary wife, Nefertiti, disappeared from historical records. These weren't secret arrangements hidden from public view. They were celebrated in official art, carved into temple walls, and recorded in royal inscriptions. The genetic consequences were predictably catastrophic. Tutankhamun's mummy shows multiple birth defects, including a cleft palate and clubfoot. CT scans of other royal remains reveal similar abnormalities. The final generations of Ptolemaic rulers were particularly affected, with contemporary accounts describing severe physical deformities and mental instability. Yet, remarkably, Egyptians didn't interpret these obvious problems as divine punishment. Instead, they saw birth defects as marks of divine heritage, physical proof that pharaohs weren't fully human. When Ptolemaic rulers appeared on official coinage with bulging eyes and elongated skulls, these weren't artistic mistakes. They were deliberate depictions of the family's distinctive features, presented as signs of their supernatural status. This twisted logic sustained royal incest for millennia, creating family trees that didn't branch so much as circle back on themselves like genetic Ouroboros. The practice only ended when Rome conquered Egypt, bringing their own cultural taboos against sibling marriage. But even more disturbing than royal incest were the whispered rumors about what happened to beautiful women after death. The Greek historian Herodotus, writing after his visit to Egypt, made a shocking claim that has haunted Egyptologists ever since. He wrote that attractive female corpses weren't given to embalmers until 3 days after death, because there had been cases of necrophilia among the mortuary workers. Now, we have to be careful here. Herodotus was a foreign visitor, prone to sensationalizing the exotic customs he encountered. But Egyptian texts themselves suggest awareness of this taboo. The Book of the Dead includes a specific denial among the sins the deceased must reject, stating, "I have not had sexual relations with a corpse." This suggests necrophilia was recognized as a serious transgression, important enough to be listed alongside murder and theft. The 3-day waiting period Herodotus described did exist, but it likely had practical rather than protective purposes. Bodies needed time for initial purification before the complex mummification process could begin. However, the Egyptian obsession with bodily integrity after death makes Herodotus's account plausible as a precautionary measure. Embalmers were priests of Anubis, the jackal-headed god of mummification, expected to maintain ritual purity. The embalming workshop was sacred space, and violations of its sanctity would have been considered both criminal and sacrilegious. Sexual violation would have been seen as horrific desecration, threatening the deceased's entire afterlife journey. Whether Herodotus's account is literally true or exaggerated, it reveals something crucial about Egyptian attitudes. They acknowledged human sexual impulses, even taboo ones, and created practical safeguards against them. This wasn't a culture that pretended sexuality didn't exist. They confronted it head-on, both its sacred and its dangerous aspects. As we reach the end of our journey through Egypt's hidden sexual mysteries, what becomes clear is that these weren't simply bizarre practices of a primitive civilization. They were the sophisticated expressions of a culture that viewed sexuality as a fundamental force of nature, as essential as sunlight or water. Every aspect of Egyptian life was infused with sexual symbolism. Their creation myths, their royal succession, their religious festivals, even their preparations for death. Sexuality wasn't compartmentalized or hidden away. It was celebrated as the divine energy that sustained cosmic order. These practices might shock modern sensibilities, but they reveal a civilization that understood something we've perhaps forgotten: that human sexuality, in all its complexity, is inseparable from our deepest spiritual yearnings, our political structures, and our relationship with the natural world. The next time you see those majestic pyramids or golden artifacts in a museum, remember what you've learned tonight. Behind every gleaming monument was a culture that embraced the full spectrum of human experience, from the sacred to the scandalous. They didn't hide from the darker aspects of sexuality. They incorporated them into their understanding of what it meant to be human. And perhaps that's the most shocking revelation of all. Not that ancient Egyptians had strange sexual practices, but that they were honest enough to acknowledge them, sophisticated enough to ritualize them, and confident enough to carve them into stone for eternity. Sweet dreams, everyone. Try not to think too hard about what other secrets those ancient monuments are keeping.